For more on this looming invasion of Ukraine, we welcome Congressman Dan Meuser from House Foreign Affairs, along with former intelligence officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency, Matthew Shoemaker. I want to start with you, Matthew, and talk about what we heard from Vladimir Putin today, right? He said that he was starting by airing his grievances against Ukraine, and then he said that Ukraine can't exist as a separate state, and he recognized these two breakaway republics. He also said that he wanted to take back land that is rightfully ours, meaning Russia's, making his intentions very clear. So right now, the expectation is that this invasion is imminent, literally within hours.
Jackie, thank you very much for having me on. Well, according to British and French media right now, the Russian president has already given the go order for Russian troops to move into Ukraine. That was about an hour ago. So if that is indeed true, then Russian troops have probably already crossed the border. Now, President Putin is claiming that they will be peacekeepers, but this is exactly the situation that I was trained on as a counterintelligence officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency. I was on the Ukraine desk itself, and my job was to get into the Russian mindset, to understand how they operate and what their goals are. And I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that there is a Russian saying that goes, "Paper will endure anything you write on it." Essentially, it means that talk is cheap. So I think President Biden has really struggled to come up with an off-ramp, if you will, to this crisis, because he keeps calling for more diplomacy, he keeps calling for more talks, but that's not going to interest President Putin at all.
And speaking of diplomacy and further conversations, what it sounds like he's essentially saying is if Putin decides that he won't invade, if he holds off, then Biden would have a conversation with him. But Congressman Jen Psaki also talking about the president preparing an executive order that would include sanctions on businesses and people as well, not really getting into more specifics than that. At this point, so many are saying the time for sanctions was a long time ago. We need to move on these sanctions and really try to show Vladimir Putin who's boss here.
Well said, Jackie. Look, even Zelensky has stated a number of times, right, that appeasement is what got us here, and why would we wait for sanctions since we know that the barbarians are at the gate. Look, in many ways, Putin played this according to his plan. He established readiness, the pretext for violence with much of the propaganda and misinformation, and then now trying to create some sort of legal avenue where he'll be invited into these republics. The United States very clearly needs to put down what the consequences are going to be, and they must be worse than any gains. And the idea, frankly, that SWIFT is off the table, the international banking network, and Nord Stream 2 is vague. That's one of the reasons that we're at this point, because of our weakness of our articulation of the consequences.
Matthew, I think the congressman is right there. It feels almost like the situation in Afghanistan where the president, the administration, they were acting late in responses, and it felt like they were on their heels the whole time. Instead of playing, an offensive game, they were playing a defensive game. But having said that, now that we're at this point, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan essentially has acknowledged and put out there, this is going to be very bloody if it moves forward. I want you to listen to this.
Any military operation of the size, scope, and magnitude of what we believe the Russians are planning will be extremely violent. It will cost the lives of Ukrainians and Russians, civilians and military personnel alike. But we also have intelligence to suggest that there will be an even greater form of brutality. It will be a war waged by Russia on the Ukrainian people to repress them, to crush them, to harm them.
Matthew, this is Vladimir Putin. A lot of people are not surprised by that assessment.
And I think the National Security Advisor is correct to a large extent. I think that, to a certain extent, actually, that I think President Putin may have miscalculated this. He's kind of backed himself into a corner where he has only given himself the option to invade. The Russian stock exchange just today dropped 11%. And the Russian ruble dropped about 2.5%. And for a population where the average income is $16,000 a year, and on top of it as well, the Russian population don't seem to have a stomach for a campaign into Ukraine. Once the body bags start coming home, President Putin is risking quite a lot, actually. He could be potentially risking his entire premiership.
And Congressman, I want to go back to you because there are very broad implications here. It's not just what we're seeing at this moment with Putin possibly, invading within the next several hours, or possibly it'll be tomorrow morning when we wake up and we find out that it happened overnight. But he has already let us know that he's got a strong alliance with China, with President Xi. And also on Friday, Cuba's foreign minister said late on Friday that actually the Russians and the Cubans are deepening their ties. They are starting to explore collaborations in transportation, in energy, in industry, and in banking as well. I mean, you start to see what Vladimir Putin is doing here, and it's scary.
Yeah, there's no question. If we just simply allow, even with the level of somewhat unity that's been created, and I agree with what was stated earlier, NATO has unified over this, and it very well could end up backfiring for Putin, as it should. But we need to rise to the occasion and bring all of our allies together. But yes, if we just simply don't get highly aggressive and be the leader in the world that we should be, and allow an aggressor to take over a less militarized, a weaker military nation, where does it go from there? And we will see this with Iran, and we certainly the big issue is with China and possibly Taiwan. We've got to show, as you said earlier, who's boss, and we have the allies to back up the leadership of the United States. We need to utilize it.
Well, once again, the world is watching. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Good to see you both tonight. Really appreciate your time and your insight.